genocide in official Turkish sources. Third, the documentation of the Armenian genocide in official German sources. Fourth, the reconstruction of the Armenian genocide on the basis of this documentation. And fifth, a theoretical summary, a review of the Armenian genocide in terms of a theory, contribution to theory of genocide. Number one, introduction. The Armenian genocide has many similarities with several other genocides, in particular the Holocaust of the Jews. But in one major respect, it is a very distinct type of genocide, primarily, if not exclusively, because of its persistent and insistent denial by Turkish authorities. This function of denial, which I consider a function of power, only powerful people can afford to deny, has several elements which need to be reviewed before I proceed to the rest of my presentation. What are the constituent elements of the Turkish denial of the Armenian genocide? There are four major components of the Turkish denial of the genocide. Number one, it is argued that essentially what happened to the Armenians was within the framework of what is called deportations, tehcir. Secondly, it is argued that the term genocide is unwarranted because only a segment of the Armenian population in the war zones was subjected to deportation. Number three, it is argued that it couldn't be genocide because it was mutual massacre. Armenians massacred Turks, Turks massacred Armenians, therefore it was sort of mutual atrocities. And fourth, because of this, it is argued that it was not genocide, but rather civil war in the context of the global war. Because of the rest of my presentation, I cannot afford to go into details of these elements of denial, but briefly, let me suggest the following. I think the idea that it was merely deportation, and even the word deportation today is being subjected to review and revision because we have now invented a new word as part of denial. It's called relocation. In other words, the benevolent Ottoman government was so solicitous of the welfare of the Armenians that it provided shelter and food for hundreds of thousands of people deported to the deserts of Mesopotamia. Even the chief of staff of the 4th Turkish Army, General Fuat, he was the chief of staff of the 4th Army, commanded by Cemal Pasha, with headquarters in Aleppo. In his book, Memoirs of World War I, ridiculed the idea of relocation, saying, relocation? What relocation? In the deserts of Mesopotamia, hundreds of thousands of people providing food and shelter, and therefore all of people who are responsive to the Turkish argument that this was a nice resettlement project, I advised them to read General Fuat's book, Memoirs, Birinci Harp Hatıraları. Secondly, the idea that it was only a portion of the Armenian population in the war zones subject to deportation is flatly contradicted by numerous Turkish sources, indicating that with the exception of Istanbul and Izmir and parts of Konya, the rest, Kütahya, the rest of the Armenian population of the entire Ottoman Empire was subject to deportation, including European Turkey, Trakya in Edirne, and also Tekirdağ. I think I'd like to dwell briefly on the main Turkish argument of mutual atrocities and therefore a civil war argument. By any definition, civil war suggests the collapse of a central government and therefore a vacuum is created, and in that vacuum, armed groups fight against each other. I submit to you that during World War I, the central authority of the Ottoman Empire was anything but collapsed. On the contrary, it was reinforced by new arrangements such as, like the Nazis did in World War II, they eliminated the Reichstag, the German parliament. The same happened in Turkey. The Ottoman parliament was dissolved by Talat Pasha. The entire power was shifted to the executive group. General mobilization was declared. In ours, the central authority was not only live and strong, it was powerful and reinforced. There was no vacuum of central authority to allow the rise and the creation of civil war. This is the most absurd, untenable argument. And then consider the following fact. With general mobilization, male Armenian population in the group 20 to 45 was conscripted in the Ottoman army. What was left was women, old men, and children. To think that these destitute people, deprived of their menfolk, would dare to confront the powerful Ottoman army and engage in civil war for 4 years. Think of it. What are the limits of absurdity of an argument of civil war? Therefore, I don't think it's even worth to discuss this whole thing. The entire structure of Turkish denial is predicated upon hollow and superficial arguments, untenable by any logic or historical documentation. And I think it is a function of power. Only powerful people can afford to deny. Therefore, allow me to confront these 75 years of enduring Turkish denial, to confront and compare with a very interesting period of post-war Turkish history, Ottoman history, which underscores the significance of the switch from admission of guilt to total denial. In the period of 1918, October 1918, until early 1920, when Kemalism began to get hold in Anatolia, for this period of 2 years, Turkey was very much like Germany after World War II. Turkish newspapers, Turkish publicists, even Turkish military, admitting, confessing guilt, saying what a great crime we committed against the Armenian people. The great Turkish emancipator Halide Edip, in the Turkish newspaper Vahakn, in several editorials, deplored the tragedy of the Armenian people, saying that the innocent population was victimized. In other words, if you study Turkish press, Turkish books, Turkish parliamentary debates, you see confession after confession. A defeated, debilitated Turkey was in the mood of confession.